Hello Mike. How are your students' research papers going?
Well, not that good. I began reviewing the drafts with students 2 weeks ago and found myself adrift in a sea of copied work.
A sea, huh?
Yes, a sea, swirling full of plagiarism.
Ah yes. The issue of plagiarism. Don't worry, Mike, you're not the first teacher who has ever had problems with this.
I don't know why my students are plagiarizing. I told them every day during the research process not to plagiarize. We read the school's policy on plagiarism together in class and I emphasized what would happen if they plagiarized.
And that didn't work?
Not at all.
I am not surprised.
What? Weren't you on the committee to help create the school policy on plagiarism?
Yes, but I was not entirely pleased with the outcome. The majority of the committee decided to keep the policy simple so it could be used for multiple discipline areas. I did not like this because it left too much grey area.
I see. Maybe this would explain some of the issues I am facing. When I conferenced with one student, he told me that he documented everything like he was taught last year by Mrs. Ramos. But I found that he plagiarized. So I went to Mrs. Ramos and spoke with her about her research and policies, and how she teaches students to cite sources. I also asked her if I could have a copy of her guidelines. She said she was happy to help a new teacher who was wet behind the ears. When I looked her guidelines over, I found out that this student did follow her guidelines. But the problem is that these guidelines were not complete, and therefore allowed students to not properly cite sources, especially sources from the internet.
I've run into this problem myself with students when they are in my media center. They learn how to take notes from resources, and use the notes to write their research paper, but don't provide proper documentation throughout the paper or in the works cited page. The students did know that this was considered plagiarism. I have even had students tell me that they found all of the information on Google. When I explain that Google is a search engine that allows you to find websites with information about your topic, and therefore cannot be cited as a source, they look at me like I have 3 heads.
That happened to me, too. A really intelligent boy, Bob, told me that he found all of his images on Google. During our conference I had to show him how Google Images searches websites for images. I also had to show him how to cite these websites. He was shocked that he had to cite each website for his images. Then there are Cindy's and Steve's papers.
Aren't those 2 high honors students?
Yes. But Cindy tried to pass off a paper her sister wrote 2 years ago.
What did you do?
Well, it was an easy catch because I'd been conferencing with the students throughout each step of their research and drafting. Cindy seemed to be researching, but when it came time for her to meet with me to go over her draft, she tried to tell me that she wrote the paper and revised it over the weekend. When I looked at her sources, they were not the ones she had been researching. After I questioned this, she told me that they weren't because she decided to turn in the paper her sister wrote. I was absolutely shocked at this. But what was even worse was her reasoning.
What excuse did she use?
She told me that she asked her sister about the research paper she did on Lewis and Clark 2 years ago, and her sister gave her a copy of her paper. Then Cindy told me that her sister gave her permission to use her paper for this assignment, and it was so good that she decided to turn it in as is. When I questioned Cindy about this, she began rambling on about how President Obama has borrowed lines and pieces of others' speeches such as Governor Devil Patrick, and he never gave him credit. Cindy continued her argument by telling me that she had her sister's permission and proceeded to pull out a note from her sister.
Wow. That is a new one to me. What was the outcome?
I have an appointment to meet with her and Steve during her study hall today to continue our discussion. I don't want to fail her because she did spend time researching, and the project isn't due for another week, but we will see what happens. I hope that I can help her understand why she can't just use her sister's paper.
You are including Steve in this, too?
Yes, because his situation is closely related. He is researching the civil rights movement. In his draft he has pieces of Martin Luther King Jr.'s speeches but provides no documentation for them. You know, Steve will make a great lawyer one day because he began to explain to me why he was able to do this. He said that these speeches are considered public knowledge, and because they are, he does not need to document them. I asked him if he was sure that every student in his class would know who said these words and where and when they were said. He thought about that and said he'd get back to me. I invited him to meet with me today after school with Cindy. Donna, do you think you could meet with us too? You are a veteran teacher here, and I would really appreciate your insight and assistance in guiding these student writers.
Sure, I'll be there. I think this is the one day I don't have a meeting planned after school. I have worked with these two many times in the media center, so maybe I will be able to add more insight into the situation. Have you come across any papers that were purchased off of the internet?
No. This was one thing that we as a class did discuss during my talk on plagiarism. They all agreed that this is plagiarism.
Have you had any students use their two BFFs?
I don't think I'm following you.
Their two BFFs, cut and paste.
Oh, don't get me started on that. I had to spend 3 entire days discussing why students cannot just find information online, cut the information that is useful, and paste it into their research paper. One day we spoke about why we could not do this and how to document direct quotes, and the second and third days I showed them how to use the information in their own words and then use the proper parenthetical documentation to show where the idea or fact came from.
Good for you. You took the time to show them how to properly do this.
Yeah, but I had to throw my other plans out the window. I don't know how I'll catch up and finish the rest of my curriculum.
It sounds to me as though you are teaching these students skills that are much needed. You will manage.
How do you do it, Donna? You seem to be able to see these problems before they come and address them with the students as they are researching in your media center.
I try to do my best. There are students who still use cut and paste, but this number has gone down over the past couple of years. I found that spending time defining plagiarism with students and doing activities with them as a whole or in small groups allowed students to see what plagiarism is, but more importantly how to successfully research, take notes, and write a paper with proper documentation. This has had a high success rate.
Doesn't that take a lot of time?
It takes a bit. But once these lessons are taught, the majority of the students don't need to be retaught. I have many that come to me for assistance when they are struggling with how to add facts from a source into their paper without plagiarizing.
Wow.
Mike, don't get too discouraged. It sounds to me like you are taking the time to show your students how to successfully write a paper using multiple sources and proper documentation. It may seem like a lot of work now, but wait to see how the students do when you give them the next paper. I'm sure that you will see more success. I will be happy to collaborate with you on your next project, too.
I just wish that all of the teachers would be on the same page regarding plagiarism. We need to have clear definitions and examples for students.
I know, but in the meantime, the students you are teaching will be more knowledgeable and will look to you and seek you out for assistance and to answer questions. Why don't you join me for the next meeting on school policies? Maybe together we can redress the plagiarism policy and the school's working definition of plagiarism. Mike. After listening to you share your experiences, it sounds like you are really aware of the many issues in defining plagiarism and your students' confusion. It also sounds like you are taking the time to mold them into successful writers. Keep up the great work.